All right. Welcome back to another Friends of Constructed Adventures. You might notice that we're a little bit later than the past couple Fridays that we've had these interviews, and that's because I'm actually talking to some people in the future in Australia on Saturday morning. Today I have with me Dani and Bill. They are the wonderful and delightful creators and hosts of a podcast called Escape This Podcast, which is essentially a meld between audio escape room and Dungeons and Dragons game, where all the puzzles are done basically over the audio medium, and they have guests that come in who either do the digital escape or the audio escape rooms with them, or sometimes in the case of this last season, they are the DMs. So without further ado, here is Bill and Dani. How are you guys doing today?
Great, and thank you so much for accommodating us and not making us get up before the sunrise.
Yes, I know. The moment I even knew that too, and the moment you're like, yeah, we can't do 1 p.m. Pacific time because it's 6 a.m. and I was like, oh yeah. I personally, when I take client calls or when I do anything, it's usually not before 10 a.m. my time, and so sometimes it's tricky with East Coast, like the active East Coast American New Yorker that's like, I'm gonna have my calls with my coffee, and I'm like, it's not gonna happen. Absolutely not.
No, I can't do that.
Yeah, so I would love for you to tell me a little bit about Escape This Podcast. Correct anything that I might have missed with my analogies of Dungeons and Dragons and escape rooms. Talk a little bit just about how it got started and just how it's changed and how it is today.
All right, well, describing it, that's probably yours.
Yeah, so the show, it's a podcast where every episode, or every fortnight, Dani designs a full escape room, but the escape room is completely audio, so it's run with a game master. So Dani runs the games, she has a full script, all the puzzles all written out, and we have guests on to play through the rooms and solve them like you would play a D&D game or like an old text-based adventure, or that sort of feeling to it. Like, oh, I want to look at the chair, tell me more about the chair. Well, the chair's got 4 legs. Wow, crazy. Like that. And so we've been doing this for 3 years. When we started it, part of the reason was like we wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah, you just came up to me and said, hey, I want to do a podcast. And I said, okay, as long as it's not reading Wikipedia pages.
Yeah, as long as we're not just like talking about whatever, which is a fine genre for people, but not what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something that was different and
something
unique.
That I felt like I could be, I suppose, almost an authority on, because the problem with non-fiction podcasts for me is I don't feel like I know any one topic. And so eventually, after going away and thinking about it, I just sort of went, hey, you know what gives you authority? Controlling a game. Do you reckon that's a possible podcastable thing?
Yeah, so we tried, I think you like improv'd an escape room in an RPG tabletop role-playing style. And we thought, this is an engaging medium. We should see if anyone else has done this. And we Googled like audio escape room or escape room podcast, and we couldn't find anything.
It hadn't been done before.
And we went, oh, this is cool. Let's kind of make a genre and do this. And
that was the wildest part.
And it was really fun. Like and it's one of those weird things where like you've designed more escape rooms than we've done. Like in real life. In physical escape rooms, we've done fewer than we have designed digital or like virtual escape rooms. But it's been really great, and I think part of what's been so fun about it is making, like, we've had a new guest for every single episode. Some returning guests, but there's always been a guest on to play through and enjoy. So that's been a really fun way to connect with people as well. And it's enjoyable. Puzzles are fun, so it's been nice to be able to do puzzles for a couple of years.
Oh, that's great. Really quickly, Monisha Ashton just said Bill looks ... so cool. So I feel like that might be important. I actually also have a couple comments from the Reddit thread just talking about how you guys are amazing, and also like, oh, that's what Dani and Bill look like. Huh. It's just like, and it strikes you because, I listen to tons of podcasts, and you get so used to hearing voices that you just, I guess, imagine what they look like. And of course, everybody looks different than what you think.
I already look different.
Oh yeah, we also, have pandemic look.
Yes.
Well,
so, my hair is twice as long as it was 6 months ago.
Well, like compare us now with the picture that we had in the thumbnail of this video, where I had no hair. This is not a pandemic look, Dani. This is a cultivated decision.
This is my pandemic look. That said, the baggy clothes, no, that is a constant. That's
Yeah.
nothing to do with that.
The fact that I may or may not be in my boxer shorts, that could be
Exactly.
pandemic, right? It's, no, my pandemic look is like 10 to 15 pounds heavier just because, like, what are we going to do in Portland other than just, like, sit around and eat? I'm not going for walks right now because half the state is burning
Absolutely.
we, as of today, have the worst air quality in the world. So we're number one.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
I know.
As I said before we started recording, been there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So there was a lot of Reddit threads that were like, "Hey, Portland, like, here's a couple things from Australia. We've dealt with this back in January. You may have forgotten because a lot of stuff's gone on since then. But, like, make sure you do these things." Anyway, we are not a show to talk about pandemics and wildfires and all that, though we might, deviate a little bit. But that's spectacular, and it's really something cool because now it feels like there's a lot of people that are trying to do what you guys do. Everybody's scrambling because all of the physical puzzles can't be physical puzzles anymore, and so everyone's trying to switch over to a digital media, which I've done a couple digital escape rooms. Like, they are cool, but it's always just like, this thing was built for me to discover this thing in the corner, and I have no reason to discover this thing in the corner because I don't know, my eyes can't look through the screen in that thing. And so have you found that people have kind of embraced your medium a little bit more? I know podcast downloads are down, but otherwise does it seem like more people are kind of discovering, like, this is how I can scratch that itch?
Oh, for sure. It's really interesting. I think what we've heard numbers-wise from escape room owners is that enthusiasts have really embraced the online thing, but the general public of newcomers, not quite as much. That seems to be what we've heard about it. But yeah, obviously escape rooms, they had to do something, and we tried to early on say, hey, you can use our rooms online if that will help you in some way. And then some people have taken advantage of that. Some people have managed to adapt their own rooms. Some, I guess, a little hastier than others in their attempt to do that. But some, oh my God, there are some people who have put an amazing amount of effort into still maintaining a really good experience with that. But that's the cool thing about it. Some people are using our sort of method. Some people are going into it in really different, almost augmented reality sorts of ways, full on like 3D captured videos. They're GoProing their own rooms. The online escape room medium is now a lot wider than when we started. I don't know if it existed when we started in any form.
Well, yeah. But it's one of those interesting things because, like, as you say, escape rooms are designed originally for the medium that they're in, right? You want to hide things in little places and like search around because you are in a physical space. And so I think the ones that stand out now in a digital format are the ones where you can see that they've really considered the change in media, right? Like for us, we always talk about searching in an audio context is very, very different from searching in a visual context. And it's based on keyword association and things like that. And that kind of gives you the same feeling as physically searching in an escape room. But you can lose that when it's a physical escape room and you've got a person with a GoPro strapped to their head who kind of looks at the thing you're meant to be looking at and goes, it's kind of, that's hard to do because you take that away from the player. Yeah. And so I think the games that have done so well have really embraced the medium to try and still give you that feeling of discovery and searching on a Zoom chat or via audio or in a 3D rendered environment with a rotatable camera. Yeah. And things that I think if they can get that right, the ones that do are fantastic. They're really enjoyable.
Yeah, it's just trying to get those aha moments, the dopamine hits, and you don't feel like, you're always, as a creator, your goal is to tightrope that line between like feeling railroaded or like, like railroaded down this way, or just like I'm in a room and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. We've all seen, like, I don't know if you've seen shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Parks and Rec, the scavenger hunt episodes where it's just like, I'm standing in the middle of the field with a book full of numbers. And when I tell people that I'm consulting, it's like, always make it easier. But mine, like, if you're doing a marriage proposal, it's way better if they beat it too early than if they, like, never make it to the end, versus escape rooms or anything through an audio medium where it's like, I could just play that back real quick. Like, I could just hit rewind. There's no timeline for it. And so that's always such a big thing. So, God, there's so many things I want to talk about, but let's scoot back. I'm going to ask you guys the question that you always ask your guests pretty much in every episode. And the first one is, what is your escape room experience?
Shockingly little for people in the industry, I think. I've already lost count. I don't know how people like keep track of, hey, this is my 500th room. I have no idea how many we've done.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the shockingly little is a bit less than it used to be.
I guess we have done in the tens, but probably not yet the high tens.
Oh no,
Real rooms.
I don't know. I think after going to LA and America and doing a lot of rooms there, come back, we've definitely done a good couple of dozen rooms.
A couple of dozen, yeah, maybe. But wait, that doesn't dispute what
So when you say the tens, you mean like
I said
20 or 30, not like
tens.
not 14,
No.
not middle way through above 10.
No,
yeah,
no.
we've done a lot of the rooms in Sydney.
Let's say 30. I don't know.
But I think what happened is we did a lot of the rooms in Sydney and then sort of went, we've done most of them and didn't notice all of the new ones popping up.
Yep.
And so now we've got another
and
backlog.
all the ones. So Sydney's
locally.
a pretty widespread city as well. So there are some in Sydney 2 hours away.
Yeah, but
Oh.
but you know, we did a trip recently to the US and we did a lot of rooms in LA and
Last year we were safe.
Yeah, and rooms in New York, and we did some Canadian rooms as well, and that was really good. That probably doubled our numbers.
Yeah, easily.
But it's been fun. I think what was interesting is when we first started designing, we'd done 5 rooms.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a weirdly common story with escape room stuff.
It's
like we have
there.
people are just like, yeah, I designed my first room. I'd done 1 room. I thought this is cool, and I did it. And sometimes that backfires, and people just do stuff that they think is original and interesting, and but then they don't realize it's like.
Look at our season 1. Look at how many blue lights I used.
Well, yeah, right, and you can see that in our design.
Wait, I'm gonna cut in. Look how many what you used.
Blue lights,
Ooh,
like
jargon.
UV
What's that?
lights to uncover
Oh,
things,
yes,
which
yes,
is like
yes.
one of the old staples of an old school escape room now.
Yes,
Or a
I
backlight.
will
yeah.
use that. Oh, that's the same thing. Yeah, UV light,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use that quite a bit, actually. If you look, I have a couple, like, copies of the Declaration of Independence. And so if you've seen the cinematic masterpiece, National Treasure, I have had a couple people steal the Declaration of Independence. And then, of course, like, UV light's got to be on it, and it works.
Yeah,
But,
that's wonderful.
yeah. It also is very different, though, because if you're in an escape room, you know, you have to deal with the people that have never done them. But a lot of people are people like you that might travel to do them. We're going to do them all, and you have to try to be original.
Oh, yeah.
So continue. Sorry.
Yes, no, it's all good.
As far as, I guess, what comes next, we should probably say, like, how many digital escape rooms we've done.
Yeah.
And honestly, hardly any. Because when all of the rooms started going big and digital, we had just finished recording our current season, which involved us playing other people's rooms, 10 rooms within 3 weeks. And by that point, we were so burnt out.
We're like, I don't want to do an escape room for the next 3 months.
At these things anymore.
Do you tend to have people that reach out that are like, hey, you're kind of experts in this field. Can you try this? Can you play test this? And you're like, oh God, no more. Please, no more.
I will say, we have a few emails in our inbox. One as old as like a year and a half ago, where we're like, yeah, we'll play that. We'll play your room. We'll review it. We'll give you some feedback on it. But we still haven't given feedback on because we're just terrible.
Well, my problem is I always warn people, like, we do get those decent, we've got a decent handful of those, and I always say, yeah, that's fine. I warn you, I'm really bad at feedback. I'm just going to tell you it's great, because that's probably what I think.
Maybe I should be giving more of the feedback, because I have to give you feedback on your rooms.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a little bit more practiced.
Bill, it's your job as like play tester. And yeah. No, have you heard of Email Debt Forgiveness Day? It was done by the Reply All podcast, PJ and Alex. They talked about how April 31st or April, whatever the last day of April is, they decreed as National Email Debt Forgiveness Day, where like you'll get an email and you don't immediately respond to it because you're not quite sure how. And then like a week goes by and you start to feel bad about it. And so you don't
you're
email back
embarrassed.
because you feel bad about it. And they decreed that Email Debt Forgiveness Day is the day where you can just respond to the email, link their Email Debt Forgiveness Day page, and no one is allowed to like acknowledge the fact that it took so long. You're like absolved of that. I think since then they said at the end of the month, every last day of the month is Email Debt Forgiveness Day. So
Well, good, because otherwise you're just going to add almost another like 8 months on to our email reply time.
yeah, 8
We have
months,
to
8 months
wait
of
till
dread.
April. Can't do it now.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. And I have a couple people that are like, hey, will you play test this? And I was like, yes, I will. And I get it, and I take a look at it, and I'm like, okay, I need to be like writing things down and like recording myself as I play test. And it's like, I can't do it right now. I'm sorry, Yasin, if you're watching this, I promise I will play test your puzzles. Okay, so going to the second question that you guys always ask, what is your tabletop gaming experience?
You're going to have more to answer with this because I didn't get introduced to tabletop role playing until I was like 15 years old and we had started going out. Anything before that, I don't know, I grew up, all of my brothers are so much older than me that I basically grew up as an only child. They'd long since moved out. And I didn't have that sort of friend group. I wasn't aware of that sort of thing existing. So, yeah, it was entirely you that introduced me to this.
Fair, although to be fair, that's young enough that I hadn't been doing it for very long either.
You had an older brother, that helps.
True.
Yeah.
So weirdly, I've been playing, or both of us have been playing and game mastering tabletop role playing since we were, for like 15 years. And I think I've played 2 sessions of Dungeons and Dragons. I think I played Dungeons and Dragons twice in that 15 years period. I started on a system called MERP, which has been out of print since the early 90s. Which is a Middle-earth role-playing system that uses D100s and table lookups to do all of your damage and criticals and failures and successes.
For reference, D100, I'm assuming, is a 100-sided die?
It's actually, you can get 100-sided die. You would use 2 D10s, where one is the 10s and one is the 1s.
Gotcha.
Roll them together to get a number out of 100, add all your weird bonuses, and then look up your result on a table and cross-reference against the armor class. It was wild. Yeah. I loved it.
Oh, God.
It's very clunky.
That sounds very clunky.
Now. But I really like that, and
the injury tables were glorious.
Yeah, it had a lot of really lovely stuff going for it. And I played that. I played that with friends of my older brother and a few friends of mine, and we played that for years. And then got into game mastering. I ran that system for a long time, and then we started playing other stuff. Dani at the moment is running a Savage Worlds campaign.
Yeah, we spent a good chunk of time on the Dragon Age one.
The Green Ronin Dragon Age RPG we played a lot of.
Bill designed his own Fallout one, which was really well done.
Yes, I made a Fallout RPG, which at some point I should un-IP and turn into something, because why not?
Can't be any worse than Fallout 76, right? Sorry.
I'm just now thinking back, and I'm getting angry now that my brothers didn't play this sort of stuff, because they introduced me to the fighting fantasy books. It seems like it was totally their thing.
That's always a great introduction to tabletop role playing. Do you know the Final the choose your own adventures?
Yeah.
But you also have stats.
Oh.
And be like,
so not the choose co-brand ones.
And so it's like you pick paths and you travel through this wizard's tower or whatever, but also then you meet a goblin. It's like, roll to see if you can kill this goblin or else you die. It's like, I'm never gonna die. I'll roll for a while, but if I lose, I'm going to the next page. Let's not pretend here, Steve Jackson.
It's a good single player RPG for the only child.
Oh, that's fun.
That was probably my first introduction to the mechanics of tabletop role playing for those fantasy books.
So listening to the podcast, it's definitely very puzzle and escape room heavy, but the narrative is really, really important. And as somebody that does a lot of teaching just with consultation, it's really important with how you're explaining things. You play games I don't know if you've heard of a video game called Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, which is VR.
Love it.
Oh, love it. Which really shows the holes in your explaining abilities, where they're just look over there, and you're under a VR headset. I can't tell what you're looking at. I have no idea, and having to really explain the direction and things like that. So that brings a little bit. So have you ever had any hiccups with guests, or I guess you always probably have ways to make things easier, right? If it's just most escape rooms have the big television or the phone you get, what happens? Do you build out contingencies to make things easier, or do you worry about time? What goes through your head when you're basically building these things?
Time, luckily, just seems to roughly work how I want it to. That seems to have always been a skill that I've had, that things do not go for drastically longer or shorter than I expect them to. The biggest time that will happen usually gets caught in playtests, because I work entirely from a script, more or less. because I hate improvising. So when it comes to room descriptions, that can be a big one. If where things are in the room and being able to visualize that is really important for the puzzles, I have to work extra hard to make sure that everything is conveyed exactly how I want. And sometimes that's tricky, but you usually pick that up in playtest.
Yeah, I think most of the time when there is confusion, the biggest source of confusion is if somebody is picturing the wrong thing, right? Because ours relies on communicating a mental map. So often what works well is geography is often not important. I think we've only really had one, maybe two rooms where the geography of the layout of the room mattered.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, I always say, if you didn't care about the immersion factor of it, right? We always have people like drawing out maps at the start as we describe it, but you don't need a. You could make a list. You could just list out the things that are in the room. You wouldn't technically need the map for most of our rooms.
Gotcha.
But the issue is the only issue is when like a particular, and it's rare because usually we're quite good with making sure people understand what they're doing and using pretty common objects that people would know. Occasionally there's certain items where we've had issues where you sort of described it in a way and someone has clearly taken it to be something else that they know from their life. Like, oh yeah, of course that would have these dials on the side and it wouldn't have any chords. And you're like, no, it's all chords and no dials. What's wrong with you? You know? And that's when you get confusion because usually you can hint and you can control and you can also change what's true on the fly. If people are doing something that makes sense to them and you get it, you can be like, yeah, that's true now. Why not? Like, I haven't built the room. It's not a physical place. I can change it and now it's got 5 walls. I don't care.
That is a sort of thing that I've had to get better at, along with just being able to quickly adapt and say, okay, no, it's not like that. Or, yes, that's fine. It can be like that. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's so far from what we're thinking that you don't understand why they're trying the things they're trying. Like, well, can I flip it over? And you're like, well, yeah, but why would you bother? Yeah. And in their head, they're picturing a different object. So that very rarely happens. And that usually requires basically a stop and go, wait, hold on.
Let's make sure
let's have a conversation about what we're picturing in our head and let's figure out where it's different. But I think that's only happened 2 or 3 times in 3 years. So
now, as far as just general difficulty goes and trying to streamline the escape process, like if there's a specific puzzle or anything that people are getting stuck on, I very rarely pre-plan it. It just sort of happens in the designing of the puzzles that I can think of the brain steps required to get to the solution. So it's about figuring out and just trying to work out while the guests are talking, because we always get them to talk out their thought process. Yeah. It's a podcast.
Yeah.
And so it can be easy to tell what sort of step they might be up to and which one they need the little jump to make. So I like, I want to say the Socratic method, but not quite. Just ask them questions. Make sure they say, cool, what do you know about this pot plant? And so then maybe
Socratic
my eyes
method,
will light up when they say the right thing.
When you say Socratic method, what do you mean by that?
Now I'm going to be stupid.
Well, it's like the idea, right? Like, it's not actually.
No, not at all.
It's not really a Socratic method at all. But the idea of, like, you can hint people by asking them questions and making them, like, calcify their thoughts and, like, make them, like, here is what I'm thinking. And you go, okay, but why would you think that? And they go, well, I'm thinking that because it's got 3 legs. You're like, yeah, that's right. 3. Where, like you don't hint them. You just get them to talk and talk and talk. And you ask them the questions that you think will get them to talk themselves into the right solution.
I found the same thing works. I also tutor school students, and I found exactly the same thing happens when you are teaching maths.
Yeah.
It is very much, I very rarely need to explain things if they've got an answer right or wrong. I just say, cool, tell me how you got there. Talk it through. Say, what are you stuck on?
Oh, that's amazing. It almost feels like you're kind of like inceptioning the answer to them, where like you're tricking them into coming up with the right answer if like their brain doesn't jump there immediately.
You're 100% right. That is exactly what you want, because people don't want answers fed to them for puzzles, and they don't want to get stuck on them forever. You want to feel accomplished. You want to feel like you did that.
Yeah.
And so if you can subtly make that happen, even though you are helping, that's exactly what you want.
Oh, that's so funny. I was talking, I think it might have been with Rita last week. We were talking about the difference between hints and clues and how like they're the same thing, but they're very different, right? Where like a clue is something that like they were already supposed to maybe get, versus a hint, which is something that helps give that little step.
fair.
And so theoretically they're the same thing, but like if you really get into like the nitty gritty, they're very, very different because
That's
the feeling
super
you
cool. I hadn't
elicit.
thought about
I know, right? Oh, yeah, I'm able to teach something. Okay, so going back a little bit further, I want to talk about your inspiration. And how you get your inspiration for puzzles, and we'll also kind of go into like where like what your process is for building. So we'll start with where your inspiration comes from, and then we're going to shoot over to like your process for building puzzles or creating a story, even whichever one you'd prefer to talk about.
Yeah, so it almost feels like it goes in together, because when I design escape rooms, the puzzles are the absolute last thing that gets thrown in there. Everything else comes first. So the inspiration comes from what I have stuck in this room. Like, I try to come up with what is the interesting setting, what is the interesting story. Then I place the objects and things around there, and then I just go, oh, cool. So where would this story naturally end? And then it all starts to go about building and connecting things to get towards that ending.
Oh my god, this is so me. Sorry, keep going.
And so, yeah, it's just whatever objects naturally end up in there, and just thinking, cool, this, I don't know, I have a phone now. A phone is essential for this room. What is there about a phone? What are all the different things that people might think of when they have a phone and they know that it is related to a puzzle? What are some different things that could be there? It could be as simple as, cool, a message shows up on the screen, but you've got to unlock it to get there. It could be that you have to scroll through the photos and build a timeline or something like that. And it's just the object itself is all of the inspiration that I use.
Oh,
I very rarely go elsewhere.
I love that so much because it's similar with me and the, you know, like immersive treasure scavenger hunts I build, and especially like right now I've been doing a lot of consultation because like I can't go fly to, you know, Barcelona or Florida or anywhere to do these. I can't really leave my house. And so many people, like when we first start talking, all they want to talk about is like the puzzles. Like that's the first thing I want to do. I want to do this puzzle. I'm like no, puzzles don't even matter. Like they matter, but they don't matter in the beginning. Where it does, it starts off with like, if you're gonna build a narrative, start with the narrative and figure out where it goes in. I'm just chatted with somebody and we're trying to figure out like what the theme of this like fun adventure is, and it started with their interest, because the things that I do are very specific to the person, and they're like, oh, they love like science, they love astronomy, maybe we're gonna end with this, right? End camping with a telescope that points out to the stars, and it's like, okay, well now we have to figure out how we're to get them there, but like you better believe we're gonna do some type of like constellation astronomy astrology puzzle. Like you have to, it's too easy, they exist already. And so it's so great to hear, and just for people that are watching to take home, like most of the time when you're creating in this medium, at least according to myself and Dani, creating like the outline first is like hyper important and helps you focus, because then you can start to plug in things, and then naturally like, oh, I need a 4-digit number that's going to be the passcode to the phone. Cool. Now I'm going to build something based on 4-digit numbers, or you can do it with letters, because whatever, it's your puzzle. You do what you want to.
I think that's one of those things where sometimes people talk about like puzzles making sense within the context of their placement, like in an escape room or in a scavenger hunt or whatever. Like, does the puzzle suddenly feel like, oh, now we're just doing this puzzle, I guess, like this puzzle that kind of came out of nowhere.
You are in the middle of a field, and this puzzle is just sitting there.
Here's a puzzle. And I think that kind of stuff happens when you have puzzles in your head and you think, I want to do this puzzle. Where can I put it?
Yeah.
And that's when you end up with those jarring feelings of like, why am I doing this puzzle? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, obviously, in escape room, there's always going to be puzzles that, you know, where you'd be like, surely he would just lock this and take the key with him and put it in his wallet. Like, he wouldn't have it hanging in a weird place. But I think if you start from setting first, and then, like, you look at your objects, or you look at your narrative, and you build it all out, and then you find space for the puzzles there, they generally will end up feeling better. They will feel like they make more sense because they are built for that environment rather than being built and then placed into an environment.
I wonder how much similarity there is to just standard narrative writing, because I've come from a creative writing background. That was always what I saw myself doing when I was younger.
Yeah.
And you see people online that talk about the different types of writing, the people who outline, the people who plan, and the people who just start typing and go.
Yeah.
And I have never understood that way. I've always been very firm on the outlines and knowing where the story is going, because Oh boy, endings are really important, and a lot of people don't know how to make endings happen.
Yeah, and it feels like some movies where I have a twin brother who works for Disney. He's a designer, so it's not exactly, but he's very plugged into like he understands a lot of times like this is how movies are. You can get tropes. You can kind of see like oh, it's the same thing. You see a lot with Marvel movies, right? It is like very formulaic, but it works. But I remember seeing some movies, and a really good example was like the reboot of Jurassic Park, which was like a while ago, so I'm going to spoil it, but like if you haven't seen it, like whatever. And I remember...
You probably have in your mind.
Yeah.
Imagine a Jurassic Park, a movie with dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
Next.
But you have a lot of people that have the ending, and they're like, we have to have this happen. Right? It's kind of like putting a puzzle. I have to have this puzzle happen, so I'm just going to like shoehorn a digital puzzle in the middle of a cornfield. And you're like, and I remember like he's like running from the Velociraptor who was like kind of his friend. It was like this thing, and he has a gun in his hand, and the Velociraptor like jumps through the door and is like on the ground trying to get back up, and he runs away. And it's like, why wouldn't he just like shoot the dinosaur that's trying to kill him? And he didn't do it because the dinosaur needed to be alive to like save him in the end. Right? But it's like, I get that moment, they want the feeling, but how it got there was just like, that didn't make any sense. You see a lot of horror movies where it's like, just run! Like,
I feel like I've definitely started noticing that a bit more when you can watch a movie and go, man, they really wanted this scene to be in here.
Michael Bay does it all the time.
Well, it's like there's that one of those recurring jokes on the pitch meeting series on YouTube, which is phenomenal if you want to watch it, where he pitches, and because like, well, why would they do that? Because the rest of the movie needs to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's that.
Yeah, purpose is everything, and when I'm telling people, like, there always need to be a reason why you're sending someone to this place, right? Whether it's like, oh, it's lunchtime and they need to eat, but like you need to find something there and not just like sent here just to go here, right? When you have these, you don't just do this for the sake of doing it, you do it because it's a purpose that drives to the end and everything makes sense and you get this nice happy feeling. Okay.
I'm just starting to have weird realizations about my own narrative process and other problems that I'm having as a result of this.
Oh,
This
no.
is like creative therapy.
Oh, good.
Oh, well, fine. It's nothing that won't haunt you for years to come. That's the actual purpose of these interviews is to, I don't know. So I want to scoot way far back now that we've delved far into the brain of Bill and Dani, and I want to ask you about how you guys were growing up as kids. I would love to know what like little Bill and little Dani were like, like what drove you to this thing where you now basically full-time kind of create these narrative puzzly stories on a podcast medium.
All right. So my childhood, I was definitely the overachieving, thought that I was outgoing, but apparently on all my report cards that my teachers talk about how quiet I was, which is fascinating. So clearly I didn't understand myself very well. But I was always, very much, I loved tests at school. The high achieving sort, I very much blitzed through primary school in that way. I did my friends' homework for them. And I liked it when I really enjoyed reading, but especially choose your own adventure stories and other ones like that. Oh my God, they like opened up a new world for me in that sort of way. I loved trivia even when I was too young to participate. And because, like I said, all of my older brothers had long since moved out, all of my video games and board games were solo activities. I loved them, but I would play all of the characters at once.
Oh.
And I feel like, I don't know how that makes a direct path to creating puzzles, but it feels like it sort of makes sense as well.
Definitely
like,
overlap for sure.
Exactly, a solo activity, but wanting to do puzzles and games, create the puzzles and games.
Fair. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I was obviously I was a big dumb nerd growing up, and I've always loved games. I've always been really into I've always been really into game design as well as a kid. Like I used to make games with all their own kind of rule sets and things like that. I remember basically making a tabletop role-playing game, which I would play only with my older brother while in bunk beds after the lights were out, and we would just talk through it and do all that. And that was before I knew what tabletop role-playing games were. But we had like a set world with its proper rules. We wrote down all the powers that each of the people had. It was very fun. And I was always into games and stuff. I don't think I really cared about puzzles specifically. I don't think I cared about puzzles until I was like 23 or something. I was like, yeah, actually puzzles are pretty cool. I kind of like puzzles.
I had a good jigsaw collection.
It is.
But one thing I always,
sorry,
I never really, one of those I've never really liked in games, in general, is I've never been a big fan of things that are too competitive. I don't like competitive stuff. I have that middle child kind of making sure everybody's okay thing. So like if I do poorly in a game, it's bad because I feel bad. And if I do really well in a competitive thing, it's bad because somebody else feels bad because they lost. And so I have to make sure everybody's always... So I've never really gotten into things where it's like, yeah, I beat you, or yeah, you beat... Like, and so I really like the idea of like escape rooms, which are collaborative. And not only that, they're also collaborative on the part of the person challenging you. Like the escape room designer wants you to win. It's not like you've beaten them if you win. They're like, yes, we all won. Isn't this great? And tabletop role-playing is the same. The game master who's the one challenging you, if they're a good game master, also wants you to win. You know, they want you to succeed. And I've always liked that aspect of everybody getting together to do this thing, which no matter the result, it's kind of just like a good result for everybody. And I've always liked that.
That's something that I've had to learn as an adult. That was not my childhood experience at all. I was also very, very sporty, so competition was very much a thing that I enjoyed.
Oh man, I literally talked about this with Rito last week, and I tell it to a lot of people. There's this great book called Puzzlecraft. It's kind of like the de facto, like everybody that builds puzzles should own it because it goes through all of them. And it's by Mike Slinker and Thomas Snyder, who I know those names because they create lots of puzzles. But they talk about exactly what you said, where you take a game like chess. And a game like chess is basically, you have these set rules and there's two people going head to head. And depending on who's smarter or who's better, there's zero advantage in the beginning, but somebody's going to win because they're smarter or better. But if you think about it in terms of puzzles, the puzzle master has a wildly unfair advantage. They know everything, they built everything, they have all the locks to all the keys to all the locks, they have everything. But it's the one competitive game where if it's done correctly, the person with all the advantage is supposed to lose. The DM is always supposed to lose. The game master, the person that built the escape room, if they did it correctly, the person that built the puzzle is supposed to lose. And the only time they win, realistically, is if it's done incorrectly sometimes, where people make puzzles that are just too difficult.
Talking about making hard puzzles, it's easy to make a hard puzzle. You just make a bad puzzle.
Yeah, exactly.
It's why Bilbo won the riddle game in The Hobbit. Yeah. Just made a really bad puzzle.
Accidentally, of course. I know.
Yeah. So what
we're learning from Bill is that he hates Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. That's what my takeaway is. But yeah, it's so important to when you're building anything like a game, a narrative, something, for things to make sense and for things to be fun. And oftentimes it gets lost on like an amateur or a new puzzle or experience creator because they're worried that their player's going to beat the game too easily. It's always such a concern for people. It's like, oh, it's too easy. And like, so what? Make it easy. It's fun. It feels good to beat these games.
It feels like there's something also very similar to the teacher-student relationship in this. If a teacher gives a question, they want the student to be able to answer it and to be able to figure out the tools themselves to answer it. And that some people, like if they're not as great at teaching yet, which is usually like if you get a student to teach another student, that student will either not give them anything or will just explain it all to them right away. So they won't have figured out that balance of helping them and making it a cooperative experience yet.
Yeah. So I have a question from one of the comments on YouTube from Chris. Hi, Chris. It says, what traits do you look for in players in order to gauge your puzzle difficulty?
That's fair. We talked about this not all too long ago.
I think in terms of puzzle stuff, I don't think we kind of think about our guests in terms of their puzzle ability.
How smart they are, how much
I don't think we're looking...
We've played these games with our older relatives, and
they're idiots.
I've given some of the questions to my tutoring students, so it can be a wide variety of people.
So I think from a puzzle perspective, ideally, I think the one thing we're looking for is people that we would know
would have fun,
want to do puzzles, because puzzles sometimes have the same thing that like maths does, where some people just go, just go like 10 plus 10. Oh, I'm not a maths person. But you got fingers. Like, what do you know, like, and some people immediately reject the idea of doing it, even though they obviously could. And sometimes with puzzles, people get the same thing. You can ask someone like, oh, okay, like there's one blue square and one green square. And they go, oh, I'm out. That's too many colors. And you think, okay, well, like, and that's fine. Some people don't want to do puzzles. You don't want to force someone to be there doing puzzles. But I think as long as someone's interested, I don't think there's like a level. I don't think people can be either too good or too...
No, it's enthusiasm, not aptitude.
Yeah. One thing we do look for in guests is because we're making a show. So we have a lot of people who we kind of curate our guests on the basis of how we think they're going to engage with puzzles in an audio medium. And a lot of that just sort of like a gut feel of looking at their work and looking at stuff they've done. And sometimes that doesn't exist. You know, sometimes they're friends or they're fans, and you just think, oh, I'll trust them. If it's terrible, I can always get rid of the episode. Not something I've never done.
So yeah, when it's trying to get high-profile guests, we try to get ones that have shown some sort of enthusiasm for puzzles or something in that sort of way before. And like, we're fans of a lot of different types of people. And one thing that we both sort of like, there are a couple of really absurdist comedians that we enjoy, and we go, oh man, I would love to meet them. Could not do an escape room with
don't want
them.
them on the show.
I don't think that would work.
It would be a 4-hour episode that wouldn't get finished. But I think, from a puzzle perspective, I don't think we play test with any thought of like, oh, this is for enthusiasts and this is for people who are new to puzzles.
No, that's true.
I think that comes out. I think when that happens, it comes out in the manner in which we hint. Because we've definitely had people that we need to hint more or need to hint in particular ways, and some people who've not had the same sort of experience with puzzles. But also in general, I think we avoid stuff that is like you warned us before we started about puzzle jargon. And I wanted to point out that we don't know any puzzle jargon. Not really.
I have noticed that you have made us define a couple of things, so thank you for that. Wouldn't have noticed.
But I think in general,
that's
like,
true.
I don't think we kind of make, you know, we're not playing like inside baseball with puzzle people. We're like, ooh, and this is this type of a cipher that you have to do this kind of thing and then use a cryptic crossword answer to do that and the other. Like, generally, even if we use elements from those, they're very much hinted and defined fully within the room. Yeah. Like if you use a cryptic crossword style clue, you use it in a way that someone who's never done a cryptic crossword could just read it as a like, oh, this is a fun little riddle, you know. Or if you use something that needs rotational cipher stuff or flipping, you set that up for people who've never heard the term rotational cipher, which is when you move things in the alphabet up or down a certain number of letters. So A would go to B, was like rotation of like 1, and you go, okay, cool. So then C is D, and
also called the Caesar cipher.
Or the Caesar cipher.
Yeah.
And so there's things like that where I think we try and avoid stuff that would be for a puzzle designer because they can enjoy normal puzzles. They don't need meta puzzles because they like puzzles. They design them. Yeah. So I think in general, I don't think we really think about the puzzle level of our guests, just the level of enthusiasm.
The only thing that I do think about is if I'm expecting someone does have some puzzle level in them, I have to make sure that the puzzles aren't skippable in that way. Like if I do have some sort of rotational cipher, I want to make sure that someone who has lots of experience with them can't then skip past 10 steps of the room and get it solved in 5 seconds.
Get it open. Yeah. And
we'll just all come at it being like, well, I don't need the hints that teach me how to do this. I know how to do it, so I'll skip the room that teaches me to do it.
Exactly. Like if you've got a Morse code puzzle, for instance, and a Morse code translator is hidden somewhere.
They can skip the translator if they know Morse code.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't
got to be aware of that.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit, Chris, just in about, because mine are very singular, right? It is for one person. And they basically touched on it where never assume that somebody has a piece of information. You would be amazed what, like, you need to explain to someone. I tell when people ask me, like, have you ever had anything go wrong? And I'm like, well, yeah, stuff goes wrong all the time. But, like, one of the first real disastrous ones was adventure number 17, Margarita Madness. You can already see where this is going, where it was in San Diego, and it was for some people, like it was for a young woman who was in the military. And one of the things that I didn't know, because I've never been in the military, despite my somewhat military-esque haircut, which somebody commented on recently, thanks Mom and Dad, is oftentimes like you have a military ID, and military members will go out to the bars and they'll just use their military ID. Sometimes they move, they didn't get a state ID, they just bring that. And it's normally not a big problem. But this Saturday they did this adventure, the bars were really packed, and so they were very strict, and they're like, you need to have your actual state ID, which none of the people who were part of this, both the friends that were kind of on the inside and the girl, brought, even though they knew that this was margarita themed. And so it's one of my big things where it's like, you wouldn't think that you'd have to tell somebody going on an adventure that's titled Margarita Madness to bring their driver's license, but you do. And so never, always make sure like over enunciate or over describe or over this. You can still have that challenge. And then when it comes to puzzle difficulty, I have people that like when somebody hires me, they're like, oh, you're going to do this for my friend or my wife or my fiance or my girlfriend or whatnot. And one of my things in the survey that I send is from a scale of the movie Hitch with Will Smith to the movie National Treasure, how do you want your adventure? You know, do we want it like whimsical and fun or like adventuresome and immersive? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult do you want it to be? And I put like a 1 is you are, you know, a limo pulls up and the driver says get inside and takes you to a bar where the bartender says I've been expecting you, order whatever you want, gives you a drink and then gives you an envelope where you go next. Versus like 10, which is, you know, you get a box that has no instruction on how to open it and you have to get it open. And when you open it, inside's an envelope with an encrypted message that doesn't tell you how to decrypt. And so all this, but it doesn't matter what, everyone puts an 8. They always put an 8 no matter what, because everyone just like, that's the number when really they're like a 3 or a 4. And so that's Chris to answer that, like traits you look for, be descriptive and just, especially if you're doing it first time for like, you know, somebody that you know, make it too easy, and if they get to the end and they're like, oh yeah, I like that, that was a little easy, then the next time you do it, you can like hit them with something a little bit harder.
You definitely learn different things that people do or don't know in different ways, especially like, you know, coming from Australia, having lots of international guests. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes language things are an issue. Like obviously the word torch keeps coming up because for us, torch...
A flaming brand, a stick.
Yeah, a torch.
Fire and oil. Why would I need that?
Can be a flaming stick, but it's also just a flashlight for
Yeah,
us. So I keep using the word torch, and I have to really remember who I'm talking to about that.
No, my American accent there.
Oh yeah, that
Yes.
was authentic. And then you've got other ones, just like it came up a couple of years ago that my parents had never heard the word sentient before. That just wasn't a word that was in their vocabulary, and they thought it was some newfangled word.
Yeah.
To which I just went, I have no idea how this is a thing, but even just standard vocabulary stuff can be really different.
The one that got us recently that we were not prepared for at all was wrench, maybe. I think we called something a wrench and we had American guests.
No, I would have called it a
Or
spanner.
did we call it a spanner? I can't remember which one. I still don't know which one.
I know what wrench is. I don't know what a spanner is.
It a spanner.
Cool. All right, then we called it a spanner.
Yeah.
We said, all right, it's a spanner. And they were like, great, I have a spanner. I will span. I reckon they thought it ended with an A. But you know,
happened too.
Like I will use this to span, and they had no idea what to do. So later on, when there was like a thing that would clearly be you would use a wrench on, we were like, "Well, what do you have?" And, well, we got this spanner, but I don't know what that is. Like, oh, it's a wrench. Oh, all right, then I use it to wrench the thing and do it. You know,
which then got into a full discussion about the phrase because we say spanner in the works, and then trying to figure out.
Yeah, you throw a spanner in the works.
Yeah, wrench in the, like you put like a wrench in the gears, right?
Like,
yeah. You throw a wrench in the gears. It's like it causes everything to do that. That's that and the accents
in the works.
I was listening to your episode with PG Law because I interviewed her as well. And so of course when I was like going through and binging, I was like, ooh, let's look at all the people that I've interviewed, like Tommy Houghton and PG Law and like Juliana Ariel from Wild Optimist and like who else? Let's judge them on how well they do. But it was talking about like kind of like Greek gods and like Heracles and like, you know, all those. And there were some that just with like the slight Australian accent, you're like, Asaf, what? Like, and,
we definitely need some spelling things out.
Because there's all this linguistic stuff that is so different in Australia. Like words that rhyme in America will never rhyme in Australia.
Yep.
Words, vowels, like America has the O's that sound like A's and the E's that sound like A's, and everything's an A in America.
Yeah.
I just had to do that very recently for a puzzle because I had a word where I wanted two homophones, but they were homophones for me, but one of them had an R in it in a place that for Americans it would totally throw it. So I had to change the puzzle.
I saw one this morning.
Oh, really?
I saw one this morning at PZLR, the Mystery League on Twitter, posts daily puzzles, and one of them today was mixing the titles of books with food, and they had Wolf Hollandaise sauce.
Oh, yeah.
Because in America, Wolf Hall and Hollandaise, Hollandaise,
that
Hall,
would be very similar,
same vowel.
But
for us, different vowels. It's Wolf Hall and Hollandaise. It's an O and an A. It's a very and so I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me, but I guess if I put on an accent, it does.
Yeah.
So I woke up to that this morning.
Incidentally, talking about Greek gods, that is a huge area where everyone has a very different level of knowledge. So you have to know exactly. I tried to pick obscure ones to put everyone on a bit
nobody
more
would
even
know.
footing. But we did that in Escape Room in Canada, where one of the things was we had to take some moons, and based on which planet they belong to, it solved a code. And I know a bit about that. So I went, cool, if it's named after a Shakespeare character, it goes with this one. If it sounds watery, it goes with this one. Yeah. Cool. And so we got through that apparently a lot faster
we
than
skipped
expected.
the thing that's meant to tell us how to do that puzzle, like we were just saying, right? We didn't need the Morse code thing, right? We knew the planets. We could just do the puzzle. We didn't need to do the part that teaches us how to do it.
Yeah.
That said, we tend to intentionally, if we feel like we've come up to that, we intentionally stop and go through exactly
and try and find what we've skipped.
We don't want to miss stuff.
Yeah, but in from a player standpoint, sometimes it's kind of fun to have that knowledge. I remember I did one escape room that was like you were basically like a kid, and you got in trouble, and your mom locked away your Nintendo Entertainment System, and like you had to get like the system in the game and the controller. And so a lot of things were very video game themed, and there was a directional padlock, and I was like, this is the Konami code. This is up, down, down, left, right, like BA. And I just did it, and then like 10 minutes later, they found like the pamphlet with it on there. Like, do we need this? And I was like, nope, I already got it. Like,
ripped it up.
I feel
It is interesting because, like I said, I'm a big trivia enthusiast. I do competitive quizzing and things like that as well. And you'd think that there would be a lot of crossover in the two activities, puzzles and trivia, but you almost have to deliberately split them.
Yes. Yeah. People will, sometimes I'll do encoded messages. I did one, an adventure for like a large group that was like Viking and Norse themed. And I took the, you can Google like Viking symbols, and there's like a loose translation of the letters. I had to scramble them because people like brought the actual, like, this is what it is. So like you had to purposely make it harder but still be in the theme. So on that, I know we're actually getting close to an hour, but if you guys want to go over, like, I'm having a lot of fun. You guys have a fun kind of narrative puzzle for me to struggle through, I believe, correct?
Yes, this will be. You won't struggle.
Well, it depends on how much binging of our episodes you do, because we're just recycling something.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, maybe you've listened to it.
You're totally fine. I'm like a goldfish, where it's just like my memory is just like completely gone. And so for the we'll also have the chat room in here that kind of love doing these things too. Go ahead and get started. For anyone that hasn't done these, go ahead and just type G if you get it, so you don't spoil it for somebody else that's trying to work on it. And then I will let the first person that types G be able to explain it. We'll pop it up on screen. And realistically, you probably got it before I did. So I'll have you guys paint a word picture for me.
Sure.
Would you like to try to do this one?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never done this. I'll try and run it, and we're all having fun. So just for some context, so what this was we designed a version, like an escape room, an audio escape room that we did as part of a crossover with another podcast called Advanced Sagebrush and Shootouts, and they are an actual play tabletop role playing show. They play in they use the Fate system, and they play as in like a weird buddy cop world. It's fantastic. Go listen to it. It's brilliant. And we didn't arc with them. So we played a game with them about the crimes of Puzzlo. Puzzlo being an evil puzzle-based villain. And so 2 Australians from the Australian Federal Puzzle Police needed to come over and help them solve this crime of a Riddler-esque villain. And so we did that as a buddy cop style role-playing game. And then it culminated in them being captured by Puzzlo and needing to do this escape room. So because of that, we also needed a little bit of space to teach their audience how an audio escape room works, and to teach their players as well. And so we designed this room, which is a full escape room, and it's on our
at the worst possible time.
Self-solvable, completely
hold on.
self-contained.
We lost you for the last 5 seconds because the internet is just garbage all the time, but we're good again. So we had the Crimes of Puzzle. You used this to basically teach them how an audio, just like level 1, level 2, level 3, right? Like this was level 1.
And so the room is a full room, but it starts in this self-contained little area, which you can solve in its entirety very quickly, and it teaches you less about puzzle stuff and more about the basic ways to do this game. And it's built around it's kind of a central little puzzle. So we're going to try and run that.
Oh boy. And if you need me to, I can type up notes that I can pop up on the screen if that will help. I already put Crimes of Puzzle up, and I hope I spelled that correctly. Puzzlo.
Yeah.
Z.
ZZ, thank you.
ZZ. Sorry. Fun fact, my Siri in my Apple, I actually switched to the Australian accent because I have a friend that I worked with in a previous life that was Australian, and she told me about it. And so I do get that a lot, where I used to live in Arizona. So it'd be like, you're going to get on AZ 101, like you're going to get on this freeway, and she'd say Z. And so I know that reference.
All right, now this is actually designed for 2 players, but we're going to pretend there's you and a second you sitting next to yourself.
Oh boy.
That's how we're going to do it. All right, so you found yourself in a small room, seemingly a storeroom, and the 2 of you, Chris A and Chris B, are tied to a chair. Your arms are immobilized completely by rope, but your legs have a little bit of room for movement. Besides the 2 chairs you're sitting on, all that's in here with you is a mop and a bucket, a very regal-looking statue of a person, and on a wall above that statue is a speaker. And of course, there's a door. Through the speaker, maybe your captor could inform you of why you're trapped here and what'll happen if you fail to escape. And I think that was then the GM of that show took over to go, "It's me, Puzzlo. I've locked you in here, and you'll never escape my ingenious traps. Welcome to my hallways of death," etc.
You have to use that voice more as we do this.
And you're sitting tied to these chairs. What do you do?
Okay, so I put up in the top, in this room, I'm assuming I'm tied back to back, correct? Or is it just in separate chairs?
2 separate chairs to which
matter.
you're each individually tied.
Gotcha. Mop, bucket, statue, speaker, door.
That's it.
And assuming there's probably some way that they can monitor me, or maybe not. So now I have to figure out how to get out of the chair, even though my arms are completely bound, which I'm like pretending right now, but I can move my legs a little bit, right?
Yes, and if you want to look at anything more closely, just ask, and I can give you a more detailed description.
Okay, so let's take a look at the statue.
Yep, so the statue is a tall, majestic statue of a figure that you recognize. It's known as Zemcat the Spectacular. That was named after a Patreon donor. Zemcat was a spiritual leader in one of the more obscure religious movements, known for their brilliant mental aptitude and their ability to outwit enemies without them realizing they'd been outwitted. The statue is seated in a contemplative pose, one hand on their knee, one hand underneath their chin, one leg crossed over the other.
Very thinker.
Looks like the
Except with a cross leg.
So, and honestly, chat, if you want to chime in, I know there's like a 10 or 15 second delay, but chime in with questions that you want to ask, and I'm more than happy. This actually could be a really fun medium that if this goes really well, we're going to do this more often, because this could be really cool. So, understandably, my goal is to get untied with myself. Or my
maybe you just want to be captured forever. I don't know your motivation.
Okay, yeah. Some people are into this kind of thing. Okay, this is PG. That was too much. So, is there a way to, I guess, scoot in the chair? My assumption would be scoot in the chair over toward the statue and see if I could, untie. Is it a possibility to move around the room, even, like scooting over with a chair?
Yeah, so the chair you're sitting on, it's like a kind of a plastic chair that you might find in an auditorium. Cheap but not fragile.
Okay.
And as you start to try and bounce your way around, you, Chris A, the one trying to bounce around, you get a little bit of height, you move a few inches across, and then the leg catches underneath you, and you fall straight over. You're now lying on your side, close to Chris B's chair, on the ground, sad.
I like to think that Chris A has been made example of. You make example of Chris A, don't try this, Chris B, or you're going to be in huge trouble. Okay. The other question is, I'm a pretty big guy. Can I just break the ropes with my immense American strength?
I think you underestimate Puzzler.
You're a pretty big guy, but those are pretty big ropes.
Okay. I'm underestimating Puzzler. Yeah, that's okay. Very true. So, let's, I guess, take a look at the mop and the bucket.
Yeah, so Chris A is still kind of on the ground near Chris B's chair, but Chris B is upright enough to go and to look over at the mop and bucket. It's a mop and a bucket.
Okay.
Picture a mop, picture a bucket. That's exactly what you see.
Okay. So there's statue, mop, bucket, speaker, door, and there's nothing else in the room that I could use to like break the rope, because that's where my brain is going. Is like, what can I use to shred this rope in like a like moving method? Correct.
Yeah, you look around for any sort of sharp corners or edges to rub yourself up against, but everything's round and baby-proofed.
Okay. Would it be possible to? Oh, is there a way to look at like what the knot looks like on the rope, or like how untieable it is?
Well, now that you're sort of fallen over behind Chris B, you try and look up at the knot. The knot itself seems pretty scary. It's a well-tied knot. Puzzler must have been a Boy Scout. It's looking good. But one thing you do notice is now that you're looking up from underneath, you see that there's actually something taped to the underside of of Chris B's chair.
Oh, okay.
That you couldn't see before. It's a piece of paper that is taped there, dangling down by two of its corners, and you can read it.
Okay.
And I can tell you what it says, and this is where you might want to take some notes for the chat.
Adding it, I'm going to remove the mop, bucket, speaker, door part. All right, go ahead. What does it say?
The head of state came to a junction, made a ring, met the leader of Madrid. They went straight up, then took the scenic route halfway back, and they found their next instruction.
This is going to be very poorly punctuated. Took the scenic route, SCENIC-ROUTE, back. They took
Halfway back.
Halfway back.
Okay.
And they found their next instruction.
Okay. You want to go ahead and say that one more time, and I'm going to double check to make sure that I have...
Yeah.
Yes.
The head of state came to a junction, made a ring, met the leader of Madrid. They went straight up, then took the scenic route halfway back, and they found their next instruction.
Okay. I'm adding this big block right into the middle. The head of state came to a junction, made a ring, met the leader, I said lead, but that's fine, leader of Madrid. They went straight up, then took the scenic route halfway back, and they found their next instruction.
And the other thing that you see, which is taped actually next to this piece of paper, but well out of reach, is a key that is taped to the bottom of that chair.
Key taped to bottom, sure. But we don't know what the key opens. We're assuming it might be the door.
One would hope.
Yeah.
Could be the mop.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I did have one commenter. Chris actually said, check the inside of the bucket, but I'm assuming that we probably can't because it's on the other side of the room. Is that the case?
It is far away.
Probably shuffle
You
it.
could maybe...
Nope. Oh no. We got a little bit of a hiccup on the internet, but I'm sure it'll kick back in a sec. Bill is frozen in a hilarious way. We'll get a sec. Oh, I think we are back.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes. You broke us because the bucket had all the information and you spoiled it, so we shut the internet down.
Yes.
No, you can possibly get over to that bucket, but if you were to look inside of it, it's empty.
Okay, cool. Okay, so it said, can Chris B rotate so that Chris A can see the bottom of their chair? Yep, I think we did this. This might have just been the delay. Oh, yes. Is there... So one can see the bottom of one chair. Can the other see the bottom of the other chair?
If they all flip around and shuffle, there's nothing on the other chair.
Okay, so it's only one, and it's a note. My assumption might be that this is a way to untie the knot. Just looking at that, that's like where my brain is going first. Like the head of the state came to a junction, made a ring, met the lead, straight up, scenic route. It definitely feels like a directional puzzle. Ooh. Oh, Manisha Ashton says, may I suggest instead of A and B, mayhaps N and P, Christian and Crispy? I'm assuming that's an inside joke in some way.
I like it. Christian, Crispy.
Okay.
That sounds fun.
Christian and Crispy. I'm okay with that. So Christian and Crispy. It's not like Chris isn't the most common name in America ever. So, so that's where my brain's going right now. Is it's like some type of directional puzzle.
It could be.
I found their next instruction. Okay. Desperately.
Yes, because doing this will find you your next instruction.
Yeah. So it sounds like I can't move and I just need to look around. What was the statue again one more time?
The statue was Zemcat, the Spectacular, a large, cool dude.
That's a great way to reward patrons. I need to think about stuff like that. That's like a whole second interview and conversation is how to succeed with Patreon. Step one, get thousands of downloads every single episode. I got to get there first. Okay, so if I'm struggling, because this was meant for more people and potentially smarter people, what is my best course of action next? Because Monisha, as much as I like the different names, I need some help.
I think the best way to think about this is what this room teaches you. One, the searching thing, which we have done. It teaches the practical action sort of puzzles, which will be the getting out. And then also the sit down and look at a puzzle for a while until it gets to an aha solution thing. And that would be what this one is. This one would be a self-contained, those things will have all the information within them.
Okay. Really quickly, Escape the Rumors actually just wanted to pop in and say hi. They've got to join.
This is the first time we've been awake at the same time.
I know, right? I did a digital puzzle with them as well. I'm throwing so much on the screen right now, it's going to be really jumbly, but they said they'll watch in the future. So hi, Escape the Rumors. Thank you for joining for a bit. I'm gonna try to mute some of this stuff on here so we don't have too much on here. I'm gonna mute the key because we have a huge block of text at the top. Okay, so I cannot move. We cannot move. Crispy and Christian cannot move. We are tied. We cannot undo the knot. We have found.
This is not the action puzzle.
It is not the action puzzle. This is the direction puzzle. Oh man, my inability is really showing through right now.
No, that's fine. The question I'd ask is, it's broken up this clue. The head of state. Actually, there's a line break before came to a junction, then made a ring, met the leader of Madrid, went straight up, took the scenic route halfway back.
Okay.
My question is, what does the head of state mean?
Yeah. The head of state would basically be like the president or the leader of something. Or it could be more literal. It could be an actual head. So it could be the head of the statue. That's where my brain is going. Might have been like where our heads were facing before one of us tipped over. Am I anywhere even remotely close? Because I'm trying to read your facial expression and I'm either way off or you have a very good poker face.
No, it's...
Thinking of less, or like the automatic thing that comes into your head is thinking of a president or whatever. Steering away from that is what you want to do and get a bit more unorthodox. That doesn't feel like the right word, but yeah, it's definitely not meant to be that. You do not need to know any presidents for this.
Yeah, I would hope not. Yeah, and we already had that explanation, or that we talked about the processes, and so I'm assuming I have all the information and I'm just going in weird, wild directions where it might be a little bit more simple or literal to it. Seeing as all I have is a statue, a broom, and a mop, and I'm kind of understanding that the broom and the mop might not be super useful right now, and it might all rely on this statue. Can I see where the statue is looking, or is there anything there? Otherwise, it's just completely empty room. Normally, when I play D&D, I just roll for perception, and the DM would just tell me what I see.
Exactly, it's very different.
Yeah. No, looking at the statue closer, it doesn't seem to be looking anywhere in particular. And yeah, you scan the room, and there doesn't seem to be anything else that can help you. There's nothing really to interact with other than this little puzzle.
And in fact, from the angle that you're at lying on the floor, this puzzle is basically all that you can see. Looking around the room for other stuff doesn't seem practical. So it's almost like the other stuff that is in there may not actually be relevant to this at all.
Chris asked, does the note tell you how to untie the knot?
It doesn't, because if it did, you still wouldn't have the hands to untie a knot.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Something else.
If you can find out what the head of state is, or what a ring would be, or what the leader of Madrid might be, any one of these lines, if you can figure that one out, you'll crack the whole thing.
gotcha. So we have to go a little bit more because I'm reading this whole thing as a paragraph, and I think the line breaks would probably help. Reading each one as their own little puzzle. Head of state made a ring, met the leader, not lead because I did that, of Madrid.
Did you get came to a junction? You got came to a junction,
Yeah,
right?
head of state came to a
Leader of Madrid might be a better one to start with because that's like I wouldn't have a clue who the leader of Madrid is, so obviously there's something else going on there.
Yeah, the leader of Madrid. Man, I really wish chat could help me here because I'm struggling. Okay, so I'm going to take a second, stall. I'm going to fix lead to leader, and I'm going to see if I can put these in their own paragraphs. I cannot.
Yeah, when I looked at this one again, I went, oh,
It is
boy.
definitely harder than I remember.
I know, I feel terrible. No,
No.
obviously these are built for more people, and
Yeah.
these games...
A lot of the puzzles are helped by people talking to each other.
Yes, for sure. And so that's tricky because I have the same thing where I have a lot of these and my roommates love them to death, aren't really into these. And so it's like, here I am doing the Society of Curiosities game by myself, trying to figure it out. Like, oh, they have a little hint section. Good. Manisha, I don't care if you've heard this episode. You absolutely can help.
Yeah, when we play games on Twitch, if we need help, it's okay if you've played the game before.
Chris said leader of Madrid equals mayor. I don't know if that's too informational.
I wouldn't have had a clue about that.
I feel like we're going too detailed into it, and it's a play on words in some way.
Yeah, because you don't know the leader of Madrid, and there's no real way of ensuring that you would. Same thing as the head of state, like that can be different as well, right? You can have a president, a prime minister, a queen. We've got two of those. We have a queen and a prime minister. So that's kind of obscure as well, but there's definitely only a single answer. So maybe it is more about...
So it's wordplay that all equal the same thing. So each one of these, head of state came to a junction. What could that be construed as? You know, made a ring. What could that be construed as? And met the leader of Madrid. What could that be construed as?
They won't be the same.
Like each line will give
thing.
you something different, but they will work together.
But if you can work out one, you'll figure out the idea of the puzzle,
What
and you
if
can
it
do
has
the
to
rest
with,
of it.
like, God, shaking hands or something like that, or creating something with each other. It's like, that's what I can see is each one of these wordplay has something to do with like coming together, right? Like came to a junction, made a ring, met the leader of. Nope, I feel like I'm looking at your facial expressions and I'm off.
There is a shared thing.
It's
that
not
they'll all get
quite
to.
that shared.
Dang it!
That's possibly just a little bit inherent in what it is that they're going to give you.
Yeah.
But I think the two to look at that might crack it for you would be the head of state or the leader of Madrid. Because you don't know either of those as facts, so how could you figure them out as wordplay?
Well, look, made a ring isn't too bad.
Made a ring is okay as well.
Yeah, I have Tanner Clark that says they're definitely cryptic crosswordy. Thanks a lot, everybody! I want to solve, not to tell me what I know. Okay.
In fact, maybe made a ring is a good place to start.
Maybe made a ring. What does a ring look like?
A ring's a circle.
Cool.
Okay.
Just think about making that ring.
Okay.
Think about drawing it out.
If you're going to draw it out, you're going to draw it. So if you're going to draw out a circle, you basically just have start with one and the ends meet together. Am I like...
No, that's fine.
If
what
you
if
have drawn it, it's all good.
I mean, what were you? If you wanted to show what you've drawn right now to the people watching this video, what would be the easiest way for you to do that, given your current setup?
Hold up a sheet of paper and create a hole. Ta-da!
Yeah.
True.
What's another way you might do that?
Draw it in like this, but my hands would be tied.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, you right now, if you wanted to have it on your screen for people to see a ring, what would be the easiest way to make a little ring appear?
Type it out, draw it out, show
Yeah.
it. Okay, so if I'm gonna I'll just make a ring appear. Looks
Yeah,
like,
what-
read out your circle to me. Oh, could be O. Oh, okay. Thank you for people. All right, looks like Chris got it. So Chris, definitely help with this solve for anyway. I will give you full credit.
That's Chris. That's Chris B.
Yeah, other Chris. There's a lot of Chris's in here. Monisha asked and said, read out your circle to me, please. So in this case, I think I have a bit of an idea about how if they made a ring, it's an O. So if the head of state came to a junction.
Now that is 2 lines. That's the head of state and
Oh,
came to a junction.
okay.
That's 2 separate lines.
State. Head of state could be.
So you made a ring, you made an O.
S.
That's fun.
So I think we're going for a password here. I'm assuming the head of state, if you come to a head, I don't know if that's the beginning or an end.
I'd say
That's
generally
funny.
the head's probably a beginning.
Yeah, so S and then came to a junction would be, oh God, I'm wondering if it'd be like a T, and then made a ring's an O, and then the leader of Madrid, M, because it's beginning of Madrid, STOM. They go straight up, which would be STOM. Now I'm just trying to brute force it with like possible letters.
Yeah.
This last one is the hardest, and the rest of it, they went straight up, then took the scenic route halfway back, is a single line.
Okay, they went straight up and take the scene. So, but I'm just going STOM.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like stomp or. Oh, I saw an eyebrow twitch. So is it stomp? S.
It may well be stomp.
So we stomp on the ground.
Wonderful. So, it's a little bit difficult because your legs are still fairly tied up, but you try as hard as you can to stomp your feet on the floor. The whole room eventually starts to rattle as you keep stomping. But in particular, the speaker starts to rattle. It's wobbling like the screws that hold it in aren't screwed in properly. You keep stomping and it keeps wobbling, and eventually it comes totally loose. It falls and it lands right on Zemcat the Spectacular's foot, shattering it into sharp, rocky pieces.
I know what to do now. So now we're gonna. Monisha says, "Hey, it could have very well been stomp with a Q." Thank you, Monisha. That was a funny joke. Actually, it was
We
really-
know Manisha.
that's
This
really
is
good. I know.
on brand.
Manisha, I love you. Okay, so obviously now I'm gonna try to like squeak on over, or crawl on over and like get one of the pieces and shred the rope. Correct?
Yeah, one of the pieces lands close enough that you can grind against it with your ropes, and eventually you can cut yourself free. You manage to do it.
Yay!
You shake your arms out; they're a bit raw and aching from being tied up for so long, but you're free from your chairs.
Okay, and then I guess we're gonna grab the key and we're gonna try it in the lock.
Yep, you peel the key off the bottom of that chair and you take it to the door.
Okay.
You unlock the door and you push it open. And then your stomach sinks.
Well.
It doesn't lead to an open hallway into an exit, but to the rest of the escape room, which we don't need to do today because it's fine.
I beat your puzzle. Oh, that's really great, and it does teach kind of that idea, and it's embarrassing because like I just played D&D for like 2 months, and so like I know how to ask for these things, but even then I was like, nope, that didn't go well. Like, oh God, I forgot to do that thing. Oh man. That was really, really cool. And so that hopefully gives anybody that watches this kind of a taste of like what you get from Escape this podcast.
Well done. That was your first time GMing.
Yeah, that's fun.
You did a very good job.
I changed one thing,
You did.
which is I put the key under the
same
same chair
chair.
as the note, purely because I liked the image of one person being on the ground and the other staying up, which I thought was going to stick for a while. So I
Yeah.
like the idea of them not needing to then look at the other chair, which you did afterwards anyway. So I could have
Yeah.
left the key at the other chair.
Yeah.
But in the interest of time and keeping everything
I was
present,
thinking of sticking it on the bottom of the bucket
you
after
know,
that.
you know what else it was? I forgot that the key isn't what falls when you stomp.
Oh.
And so I was like, well, one chair's already on the ground. If you stomp now, the key's not going to fall. Realizing that wasn't actually the
You
case.
weren't rehearsing enough.
Yeah, I know.
Like, you could have cut them up in bucket because they're only relevant to the later room as well.
I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just a mini version of the sort of stuff that we have and do.
Oh, that's super cool. And I really want to do more now that I'm like warmed up. And so I might beg you guys later to be on one of your future podcasts. So keep me in mind, but
Well, the
please
other thing
pair me up with
The other
somebody
thing
smart.
you can do, and that everybody here can do as well, is all of our notes for all of our rooms are free. So you can go to our website, you can go in the show notes of any episode, and it will take you straight to a full version of the escape room with all of the stuff you need to run it, and you can run it for friends or force friends to run them for you. So if you ever want to play more of these, either you or anyone else listening, you can just play them. You don't even need to listen to us ever again.
Or write your own and then come on one of our guest seasons.
Yes. Oh, God.
Or make us play.
Oh, my gosh, that'd be fun. And so now it is the time where we plug everything because we've gone a little over a usual hour, but this was way fun, so I don't care. So you can find these at Consume This Media. I might do that. I might try to create this for a bunch of players and just steal what you guys have because I think that'd be really fun. It's very whodunit. You guys do have another podcast which is a little bit more whodunit, correct?
Yes. So aside from so the reason we have Consume This Media is it's our sort of overall brand for a few of the things we do.
Verb This Now.
The Verb This Now network. Because we have Escape This Podcast, our escape room show, and we have Solve This Murder, which is a sort of play along improvised murder mystery solving puzzle.
The murder
game.
mystery is not improvised. The solving is
So
improvised.
Dani is the game master who controls all of the knowledge of a murder mystery, and I, as detective, try to solve the murder mystery over a series of episodes. And then if you think you can get it before me, you can email in and say, hey, I did it before you. You suck. And I go, oh, you got me.
That's how it is with every time I do puzzles and anybody watches.
So that's there as well. That's Solve This Murder. You can find, or you can see that as well on consumethismedia.com. And we're on Twitch just playing games and things as Play This Game, though the Twitch address is twitch.tv/playthisgame_live. And every weekend, Saturday evenings for the US and Sunday mornings for us, we play through the Nancy Drew games, which are full of puzzles and story and fun. And we've been doing that since day one, so we're many games in now. But if you want to join us, we're starting a new one this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And then throughout the weeks, we play all other games, and I've been playing XCOM and the Batman Arkham games. Dani is partway through a blindfolded run of Pokemon Blue, where she can't see the game at all and tries to play it. And you're up
I'm just
to
about to beat the 8th gym.
Yeah, she's right up to the 8th gym.
That's very Twitch Plays Pokemon. It's very similar to that.
Except it's just watching Dani bump her head into a wall for hours.
Are you explaining? Oh, I lost him for a second. I'm so curious about how that works with Twitch, with blindfolded Pokemon. But to recap, while we wait for the internet to cut back in, we have. I've been speaking with.
Full network connection.
Hey, we got him again. We're good.
There we go.
Yeah. So what mediums can we listen to these podcasts? Is it pretty much all of them? Are there any specific that you go for, like Apple, Spotify?
No. Anywhere, everywhere, and anywhere, I believe. They're on Spotify.
Do the Google ones work
I
yet?
think they're both now on Google Podcasts, which was
Google Podcasts used to have a problem with Australia.
It hated Australia for a while, but I think they should be up there now. So, and if you can't find it on that platform, then it should be on all the others.
Yeah. iTunes is the one that I go for, but Spotify has been trying to make ground, even though I'm not a huge fan of how their podcast player
I've
works.
heard that before.
I wanted so badly to like Spotify because I love them for music. But and for a brief while I had an exodus from Apple because I was tired of planned obsolescence, but I came crawling back because everything just like works so well with everything else. But when I did that, I was like, perfect, I'm going to do Spotify. And then I just like couldn't. And then they bought Gimlet Media, which is the big podcasting company. And I was like, stop spending money and just make your podcasting platform better. I'll get off. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. I'm sure you guys deal with this as professional podcasters. I also put up Twitter, ESC This Podcast, ESC This Podcast. Instagram is @EscapeThisPodcast. But most importantly, if you just check out Escape This Podcast, you can play along with much more, I don't know, flushed out, story-driven versions of the tiny little morsel-sized game we played today. If you guys ever want, I would love to have you back on and we can play more of like a full-fledged game. We could get a couple more people in if you wanted to try a video medium. This was so much fun. Thank you guys so much for coming on there. Next week, I will be talking with Sandy Weiss. I believe that's how his name is pronounced. Let me double check my notes. Yep, Sandy Weiss from the Mystery League. We're going to be talking about puzzle creation.
That was the puzzle I was talking about this morning. At PZLR on Twitter is Sandy. And he did this. So complain about Hall and Holland. Go when they're on the show, just be like, hey, Wolf Hall and Hollandaise don't rhyme.
In Australia.
How dare you not cater to your Sydney Cider audience?
Yes. Yeah. The massive Australian audience that probably watches what you do. Oh, man. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And to everyone at home, have a fun, safe weekend. If you're in California or Oregon like me, stay inside because it looks like Blade Runner outside. And, yeah, And until next time, happy adventuring and happy building, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.